Hi, welcome to another episode of Thrive Extra Musician Podcast, a weekly podcast where we dive into the personal development as musicians to create a healthy living with mental clarity and vibrancy. I'm so excited to bring you this episode. It is our very first interview on this new podcast. I'm bringing you today's guest to discover topics on importance of having a creative outlet besides music and how to bring creativity and efficiency into your practicing room, and tips on turning your hobbies, your passion into side business, and better time management hacks, and a lot more. So stay tuned. So welcome back to the show. Today's guest, she is a New York-based violinist with a graduate diploma in historical performance from the Juilliard School. As a Baroque violinist, she has been hailed as a fireworks soloist and has performed throughout the US and internationally as a chamber musician, orchestra player, and soloist. She currently performs regularly in New York City and Westchester County. She turns her passion of cooking into actual business. As she started her blog, Hungry Musician, and attracted thousands of followers on her Instagram, she shares not only her food and music, but insights in practice and career building. Let's welcome today's guest, Sarah Jen Kenner. So I hope this intro is okay. Just let me know if I missed anything important you wanted to mention.
Oh my gosh, it was perfect. I'm like, oh, stop, no. It was really nice. Thank you so much. But yeah, I'm so excited to be here and to be talking about, all of the different facets of what I do every day. Because I'm passionate about music and I'm passionate about food, and I'm really glad to be talking about them both.
I know, that's why I really was intrigued. I was like, I need to get you on the show because, I'm so into cooking. As you saw my other Instagram, I just really, sometimes post a lot of food pictures and stuff. And I know right now, like everyone trying to stay at home, and we just really, try to eat healthier. And can you tell me a little bit about, or just to the audience about, like how you started this, the food blog, and what inspired you?
Yeah, totally. So, I've been doing my blog, The Hungry Musician, for I would say about 7 years now. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little over 7 years.
Wow.
And it first started, I was a freshman in college, and I didn't have my blog at that point, but I had just gotten to school, and I had all this freedom. So all I was doing all the time was practicing, because that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to get better at the violin.
Yeah.
And I know I know I'm not alone in that, And so I was spending late nights in the practice room. I was spending all day in the practice room when I wasn't in class. And so at the end of that year, I started to feel really just not right. Like I was not feeling healthy. I was so tired. I had gained a lot of weight. Like I wasn't feeling my best. And I started to think, like, what's wrong? And also on top of that, I had put all this work in the practice room, but I didn't feel like the results I was getting on my instrument were necessarily, they weren't in line with how much time I was putting in the practice room.
Yeah,
So
it's like we always don't really think about efficient practicing that much when we're younger. Yeah.
right. So something was wrong. So over that summer, I committed to learning how to eat better and also make that food delicious. So I had always loved to cook, right? Like even as a little kid, I loved to cook. And I said, well, if I know how to cook all these delicious foods, why can't I learn how to make them, but also make them healthy? So that was sort of the beginning of me starting to experiment more in the kitchen and get more comfortable with creating my own recipes. And then after a while, I was just talking about my cooking so much because I was enjoying it so much that my friends at school were like, you should start a blog. And at the time, like, I had no intention of it becoming a business or becoming like a huge thing. But I was like, yeah, okay. So I started blogging about the recipes I was making. And then over the years, as Instagram started to become more of a thing, I was posting recipes there and building an audience there. And then the rest is kind of just history. But now, my blog, it has sort of changed over the years in its purpose. And I feel like the purpose that it's serving now, and that I want to help it to keep serving in the future, is that I want to inspire musicians and creative people to channel their creativity in the kitchen and to cook in a way that fuels their body and makes them feel good. And that's not always necessarily what we think of as healthy food, but foods that are nourishing and like make you feel good, accomplished, creative. So that's sort of my whole thing. And
Wow.
my yeah.
That is amazing, Like I always know there's always some stories behind those like, big blogs and we always get inspired and I think it's the inspiration and the purpose kind of make us to stick with the things we wanted to do and kind of like, start this podcast because I would never really think about that too. So okay, so talk about the being healthy part, and I can definitely relate to. Like I was that also undergrad, very unhealthy eater. Just think about practicing, and yeah, literally
Oh
six,
yeah.
7 hours, and you don't feel that great for sure. So, so I noticing that you really, really growed on social media, and the part of the thing is like challenging us is we as musicians sometimes we tend to feel like okay so maybe we should always do like a lot of playing and all the feed is like practicing every day 100 days challenge but then when you post a lot of food pictures like my professor actually follows me and so I can feel that like judgment from myself. I'm like, oh, I post some food picture. It's like I didn't practicing, hard enough. How you find that common ground, like, with cooking and the violin side?
So, first of all, I think the feeling that you're describing is extremely common, and it's a feeling that I have personally felt before, of well, I'm posting things other than music. Like, what are people gonna think about this? And to that, I have to say that, my whole thing with the cooking is that it feeds my like literally it feeds my creativity as a musician. So my identity as a musician is not just limited to the work that I do on my instrument, but it's also the cooking that I do. And I like to do art and I have so many hobbies that I like to do and those are all part of who I am as a musician and as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I think that our field, because it conditions us to practice hard, and it is so competitive in so many ways, we are conditioned to feel that we need to hide those things. Because if we do them publicly, people are going to say, "Oh, she's not serious," or "Oh, he's not serious. They're not serious." And that's totally not true. And I think
didn't
that
get that. Could you try again?
oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
My Siri went off. Um, and yeah, I think that we're conditioned to feel that way, but it's totally not true. Um, and I think a lot of that comes from within us rather than actual judgment from other people. Um, so yeah, I just genuinely feel that musicians should not be afraid to show those other sides of themselves. And if what you want is to only be posting your playing and your practicing videos, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either. If that is, if just doing that like totally like lights your soul on fire and that's what you want to post, then you should post that. But if you feel an urge to post something else and to, capitalize on another side of yourself on social media, then I think that that will actually make you a better artist for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes we, like as a human being, basically, like we always have different interests. We cannot just have like, one side. And I don't know how you think about this statement. Like I do think sometimes musicians needs to have another hobby besides music.
I agree. I mean, I think that, whatever makes you feel well-rounded, you in the general sense, so whoever's listening, whatever makes you feel like full, that's what you should do. And, I think that other hobbies definitely do help. And for me, I know, and maybe for you, I guess too, with cooking, it is not only something that contributes to our creativity, but it is also an escape in a
Hmm.
way. Because as wonderful as it is having a creative career, we are creative people and we also have creative careers, right? They're kind of two
Yeah.
separate things. And the creative person cannot always just be satisfied by a creative career. And so I think sometimes it's helpful to separate from needing to feel creative on your instrument and getting that creativity from elsewhere. And so for me, a big way to do that is cooking.
Yeah, it's almost like a very, like a self-care type of thing, you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 100% a self-care thing. I mean, in so many ways, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
not only is cooking, you know, uh, for many people, it's a way to sort of turn your brain off and just like be in a creative mode. Maybe it's not that way for some people, but that's a big thing that I'm trying to help people with, which we can talk about later. But um, yeah, it's also a self-care activity in that you're literally feeding yourself. You're literally sustaining your own body with something that you made with your own two hands. And I think that is so cool. Like that's the thing we don't talk
Definitely.
about with cooking that much, but
Yeah, I don't know how you actually come up with all these recipes because sometimes I feel like I was in the kitchen, my husband's asking me, "Oh, I need a recipe so I can make it." I was like, "But I don't really have a recipe. I just make it." I know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally know. And um for me, I mean, I cook that way so much too, right? Like I'll just go into my fridge, I'll be like, "Oh, I have this, I have this, I have this, and I'll make this." And it'll just be like a spur of the moment decision and I won't remember what the exact recipe was that I did. So the recipes that I put on my blog, I normally like take a little bit more time to actually like test it once or twice. Because I want to make sure that it's that if I put it out to the public, that they're going to get the same exact results
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
got.
it's not like my husband's gonna get mad, like, oh, this person didn't write this instruction clear. Like,
Right.
yeah, that happens twice. Like, and the kitchen madness right there.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, but yeah, I do think like, being creative in the kitchen, like, really helps for liberal thinking. Like, in terms of you going to a practicing room, how you looking at your own practicing, own playing. And how does that really, really like in detail wise, like how did that help you for your playing?
That's a really good question. It's so I guess this isn't like something I've thought about specifically in that, in terms of what skills translated over. But I do think that like critical thinking and adapting are like two two big ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're doing a recipe, let's say, and we were making a sauce and we taste it and it doesn't taste great. We're like, okay, what is wrong with it?
Yeah.
Does it need more salt? Does it need more spices? Does it need whatever? And we have to make decisions based on, we have to identify what's not right and we have to make decisions. And the same thing goes with practicing, right? When
Yeah.
we're playing a passage and it's like something just doesn't sound right. Like I
Yeah.
could play this yesterday. Why does it not sound right? And so then you have to practice slowly, you have to break it down, you have to play in rhythms, and then you have to identify. It's like tasting, right? Playing slowly is like tasting.
Definitely.
So,
It's a very, very great analogy right there. Yes, definitely.
yeah, and so then you have to adapt as you go, and then that's where adapting comes in. You have to sort of shift gears and do something a little differently that you weren't necessarily expecting because it will be in service of a better result. Um, so for cooking, that might be adding the salt or adding some liquid to thin it out.
Yeah.
Or with practicing, it might be, I'm gonna play this part in a different part of the bow, or
Yeah.
I need to play this part softer. I don't know.
I think sometimes like cooking actually it's really testing you to be responding like immediately because things happening in the moment, right? And so maybe for performance too, like during the performance something gonna happen and you have to add some salt.
Exactly. And, I made the analogy to practicing, but it also very much applies to performance too, where we have to be constantly alert and thinking of how we're going to adapt in real time. And I think that cooking is very much that way as well. Because if something's burning and you don't do something to save it, dinner's ruined.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that the skills are very much connected. But another way that I really do feel that it helped me overall to just be a better player is that, and it might seem kind of backwards, but because I was practicing less, I was spending more time on myself, right? Like I when I was in college and I made this choice to have a better lifestyle, I was spending more time cooking. I was spending more time planning my meals. I was spending more time exercising. I was making more time just for myself. Like I was prioritizing my self-care. And I was spending less time in the practice room, but I was actually getting better faster because I think I was I don't think I know, I was utilizing my practice time much more efficiently. And it was forcing me, because I was not spending 6 or 7 hours a day in the practice room, to be like, well then, okay, how can I use these 2 to 3 hours, or on some days 1 to 2 hours, or less than an hour. You never know how much time you're gonna have to practice on a given day. And it really forced me to think, like, how can I use that time to really, really make a difference and really advance my playing?
Yes, definitely. I think that's something we have to think about, like as still a student at school for me. But I don't really get like private lessons anymore. So now I have to figure out everything myself. It's a little painful process, but like sometimes you don't trust yourself. You're like, oh, am I doing this right? But like then you start thinking, wow, your professor has so much things to do, and then they're only practicing like an hour or less than an hour. How they prepare for the concerts, right? And it's just really like how much you can actually done in a short period of time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the whole idea of quantity over quality is really pushed on us as young musicians. Um, you know, just in general, there's all of this conversation going on around, like, how many hours did you practice this week? And how much practicing did you do? And I really genuinely feel like the questions we should be asking our students, if we want them, or if, sorry, not if we want them, if they want to, really be making a difference in their plan faster, is what kind of practicing did you do this week?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
So
like, how did
I
that
want to
practicing feel? And
Yeah, I want to mention this too because I saw your hashtag LIP 2020, leap into
Mhm.
practice, right? So that's kind of like the idea of what you just said, like really, really focusing on certain things to practice.
Mhm.
So how
Yeah,
has that
so
been?
um, it was really great. So just a little background on that. So I did 4 years ago. It was a leap year 4 years ago, like it was this year. And so I did a challenge in February called Leap into Practicing. And at that time, 4 years ago, I was preparing for my Juilliard audition. So I wanted to kind of hold myself accountable by doing a practice challenge. And that particular challenge was geared towards practice journaling. So the idea was that every day I wrote in my practice journal and sort of reported on just my general reflections.
Mm.
But this year, I was in the process of applying for an international competition, and I was making an audition tape, and so I didn't have as much time as I normally would have liked. It was one of those situations, like you were just saying, where we don't have that much time, but we have to put out a really good product. And I was thinking, how can I, hold myself accountable and really think deeply about how I'm going to make this work. And so I decided to host another Leap into Practicing challenge, and I called it Leap into Practicing 2020. And the whole idea of it was, again, it wasn't your normal practice challenge, and that it wasn't about practicing every day. It was about doing something intentional every day in service of your final goal or your final goals. So the first day was about setting those goals, and then the second day was about your intentions behind those goals. And then as it went on, we covered topics like mental practicing. We covered topics about like practicing for performance. Um, yeah, it's all saved on my Instagram, so you can go back and look at them if you want. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was really fun, and like, we got some, a bunch of people involved, and they also did the challenge. And um I think it was probably even more helpful for me than it was for them to actually like have to sit down and create a new thing every day.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to approach practicing that aren't just, the ways that we normally think. So
Yes, definitely. I think, I was just thinking about like later on we're gonna probably talk about like how to get more like get to connect with you for my audience. Yes. So now, because all these things you talk about, what if some students wanting, I mean, not students, what if some, some people, some audience are listening and then they're like, wow, I have some hobbies I really, really like to also do, on the side of my, violin or singers or anyone, any musicians, what do you think they can start with? And probably like what kind of mindset they should go into, like having going into diving into that kind of like having another side business.
so this is if they're trying to, like make it a part of their career.
Yeah, or just
Okay.
trying to, because I think endeavor is a better word, because now like we always want to just test the water and then going and then see if we really really like stuff like that, right? And we never really know if it's really gonna work out.
Absolutely. Um, I say, just do it. I mean, in terms of like finding new hobbies to do, there's so many things that you can try. I mean, there are like meetup groups that you can, tinker around with. And now, that everything is online, there are so many online courses for things.
Yeah.
If you're looking to pick up a creative hobby, there are so many like little kits you can buy for building things and making things. Like, just whatever it is that you want to do, I say just try it. And in terms of um, making an existing hobby into an aspect of your career in some way, um, I would say that for me, what has helped, there's several things. But I would say, first of all, to just come from a place of really genuinely loving it and enjoying it, because that energy will translate in what you're putting out. So if you really love knitting, for example, but you're also a cellist, I don't know. I'm just making an example. Like, you know, show off the things you knit and just be really excited about them because you probably are really excited about them. And um, be just as genuine with your successes as you are with the things that don't go so great. Like,
Yeah.
I'm the first one to say, like, if I mess up a recipe on Instagram, I'm the first one to be putting it in my story. Like, I'm just like, hey guys, look how gross this looks,
Well,
like.
yeah. Actually, you know what? I really like how you're being vulnerable on social media. Like you share some kind of, of course we all share like, oh, I did this great, I did that one, and all the achievements. But sometimes we do make mistakes, or we do have something that we didn't do quite well, and we learn from it. And I like how you actually share things like that on Instagram and about like, things that you learn along the way.
Thank you so much. I mean, yeah, I really think that it's important for, especially people who are very visible on platforms like Instagram, to have a level of vulnerability because it really creates a sense of trust between you and the person you're talking to at the other end of the screen. And for me, I feel like for myself, it really just makes me feel like I'm not hiding anything, like I'm just sort of putting it all out there. And if you like it, if you like it, if you don't, you don't. So those are the first two things, one is just to be genuine with your excitement and just spread that excitement as far as you can. Two is to be a little vulnerable and like be open about even the things that you feel like you're an expert at, whether it's music or a hobby of some sort, be open with the fact that you're making mistakes too. And then the third thing I think is, and maybe this is more important than number two, actually, or equally as important to, is to connect with other people who are doing the kinds of things that you're doing. And this is something that has really helped me with my development on my social media platform to create relationships that are really meaningful. Um, I follow all sorts of people on Instagram and I interact with so many people on Instagram, but connecting with people who are so uniquely like-minded. So like you've obviously, for example, like you're a violinist and you love food. And so
Yeah.
when we connected, there was like an instant like, oh, this person gets me. And we can vibe on these topics and all of that. Um, but I've also connected with people who do like yoga for musicians because I really love yoga. I've connected with people who they're musicians that do other sorts of art forms too. So whatever is important to you, find those people who share those values because that's what's really going to make social media meaningful for you and also help you build an audience.
Yeah, so I sometimes feel like social media can be a little bit toxic for people, and then it's just like right now we really rely on the technology, and then some people just really addicted to look at social media all the time. But then like actually sometimes like for you, social media almost like part of your, is it still like a business side of it or like a extra income?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I use my social media platform as a way to, promote the things that I'm doing. But it also for me is a really, and it has been this way for years, ever since I started doing Instagram. It's been a way to connect with people. And, I think what you said about social media being toxic sometimes is very true. And I think that a lot of the time that comes from us, seeing something on our feed and it just doesn't feel good. Maybe it's, it doesn't matter what it is. You scroll through your feed and you pause on something, you're like,
self-judgment kind of.
yeah, self-judgment, or if you just see something that you're like, I don't necessarily feel like that goes with what I'm trying to, fill my life with, like whatever it is, I'm a huge advocate for keep whatever, makes you feel good, keep it in your feed. Whatever doesn't make you feel good, don't even think twice, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like we're on our phones so much, right? Especially now during, this time in with the virus and everything, and everyone's stuck inside and we're on our phones probably more than ever. And we're constantly getting all of this information, and I think that it affects us probably more than we realize sometimes. Would you say?
Yeah.
Like we
News.
see, yeah, because we're just mindlessly scrolling and we don't always realize, we don't always like sit down to think like, is this making me feel good? Is this like, inspiring me to do something creative, to do something good that helps other people? Like, are we actually like, is what we're looking at in our feed actually making us better, or is it making us not feel good? So,
Yeah. Definitely. I think even especially now, like all the musicians are kind of stuck at home, right? We can't really have any concerts, we can't really have performance. So like almost like social media is a way for us to promote ourselves and to get students. And a lot of my friends actually started wanting to get students from the social media. And so you kind of rely on it for your kind of like, source of income. But then it's also very hard that you kind of addicted to looking other people's like content stuff. And what do you think you would suggest people to do? Like if they wanted to right now, like, they're not really on, a lot of people are not really on social media that actively before, but now they kind of have to rely on that force, the reason of social media is especially Instagram is the biggest platform for us to like connect with people and to get our, customer basically from, the students.
right. So what I would say to that person is I would say if you're looking for like an immediate change, like if you're looking like if you're sitting there like I need to get 5 more students right now, you know, if I need that income and I'm looking to get those 5 students right now, but I haven't been active on Instagram and I don't really know how to use that platform to my advantage, I wouldn't depend on it for that.
Mm-hmm.
If you are someone who is, and I'll get back to what to do in a minute. If you are a person who has been using Instagram and has an audience and is like, I could turn this into something, then I would look at what other people who you admire on social media, what they're doing to sort of promote themselves, promote their business. There are also like several social media pages you can follow. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's a few I have in mind right now. I can send them to you so you can put them in the comments if you want.
Yeah.
But there's lots of business Instagrams that will talk about ways to grow your audience and little, tips and tricks for promoting yourself. So that's what those people can do. The first group of people who, don't really use Instagram or, don't, yeah, if they're looking for like an instant change or something, really not even an instant change, but if they want to make a change quickly, I would say start growing your audience on the platforms that you are comfortable with. So if that's Facebook, create a Facebook group or a Facebook page for your business or for your teaching. Maybe I don't know of many other places besides Facebook and Instagram, but
like LinkedIn, maybe. I don't know.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I personally don't go on LinkedIn all that much, but if that's where you're connecting with the majority of your people, then yeah. And maybe it's real life, maybe it's through email if you have an email list. I don't know. It's like pick the place where you have the most influence and make it known that you are, opening up new spots in your teaching studio, or you are giving an online course, like whatever it is. Pick the platform that you have the biggest audience on, and then make an announcement and just make it public there. That's not to say that you should not use Instagram. I just think, when we're thinking about how to, as musicians, we're entrepreneurs, right? And if we're looking for the easiest way to further our career as an entrepreneur, we have to start with where we have the most influence. And so, like, for instance, for me, that is Instagram. It is not Facebook. I am really bad with Facebook, like abysmal with Facebook. So that is something I'm working on. But, I've been able to build a certain, platform for myself without Facebook, or with the minimal use of Facebook. So there are so many ways to go about building a platform that aren't just necessarily on Instagram or even on social media. So that was a really long explanation, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's definitely great. It's it's a really, really good long explanation for like how people are gonna really perceive this, because right now it is very hard because there's less of human connection, really just person to person, face to face, like any kind of connection. I cannot really have any students right now like holding their hands saying don't do this, don't do that. Like it's being difficult. Yeah, so I also noticing that you were just trying to be very, very gentle on yourself recently. I saw that April you had a post on like follow your intuition, and yes, so I know we've been talking about the time management, like how to practicing more efficient and stuff. Now, you think how we can be not only just gentle on self, but like managing that all these things that you have to do. I believe that you having a food blog and on the side of all these performance and stuff, it's gonna be really overwhelming sometimes. Have you had that experience, and how you kind of like overcome it?
Absolutely, I've had that experience. And I think that is, yeah, I mean, obviously right now it's a different story than it was 3 months ago. 3 months ago, I was, running from gigs to teaching to practicing to, doing whatever. And then, having to cook dinner somewhere in there. And, I was finding it difficult to focus on my food blog with the amount of concentration that I wanted to focus on it. But what did help me, and what does help me even now, like even in lockdown, I've still had things that I have to do. Like my day has, had some structure, and I've had to sort of plan out like how am I going to fit this in exactly where I want. So a really good technique that I recommend is time blocking. And so
I just
would
started.
say, yeah, it's magical, right? Like it's
Yes.
so great. And ever since I started doing it in college, like around when I was probably around when I graduated college, I started, time blocking. And what that means, if people aren't familiar with it, is I'll show you like what my planner looks like. So,
yeah, for any listener that didn't really see any, the graphic stuff, and maybe I'll post a small blog, like a blog schedule thing from my calendar.
Oh,
But
right, because we're not
it's great.
totally
But
on
yeah,
video.
that's fine.
Yeah. But anyway, so basically, I just I like to have a calendar where it's laid out vertically, where I have it's by the the half hour, right? And I can just kind of scan down the list and I can see like what's going on at this time, what's going on at this time, what's going on later tonight, what's going on later this week. I can look at it all laid out, and I can like physically sit down. I like to do this in the morning, but some people like to do it at night. Some people, I used to do it on Sundays. I would do the whole week. This was when I was in school and I had everything planned out for me basically, but now because things are much more fluid,
If you
I do
yeah,
it in the
if you
morning.
wanna show, it's fine because we're
Okay.
gonna have that on YouTube so people can actually see it. That'll be
So
nice.
I have it's called the Passion Planner.
I love that.
Um, Yeah, and it kind of looks like this, where you have the day and then you have all of the times kind of laid out down here. And it has a to-do list. So kind of just getting things out of your head and onto paper is a really good way. And I think a big thing that I found is that my first instinct to say is to say, I don't have time for this today, or I don't have time for this week. But first of all, if I really value doing that thing, I can find a way to make it happen. And the way I can find a way to make it happen is by sitting down and time blocking.
Yeah. That's yeah, definitely time blocking, but then we have to kind of be also wise about how much time we use or we need for each task. Sometimes I always underestimate how much time I really need for each task.
Absolutely. And there is, I found with time blocking, like I've sometimes run into traps where I'm like, I said I was going to get this done by 6:30 p.m. and now it's 7:30 and I'm not even close to done. And so the thing that I plan to do at 6:30 when I finish with that task is now going to have to be pushed. And I think that there is a great deal of flexibility that has to come with time blocking, um, which it seems like counterintuitive because it's like I'm laying out my schedule like I'm supposed to follow it. And yes, I to a degree, but the whole point of time blocking is so that when you're planning it out, you know what needs to get done and you know basically how long it's going to take. And so you can better calibrate as you're doing it so that you won't get stuck just doing one thing for the whole day. And then it's 9 p.m. and you're like, oh my God, I had 3 other things I had to do.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how it helps me.
And probably be kind to yourself if you don't really finish it,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, being kind to yourself, especially right now, there's so much going on and uh life doesn't look like it did for a lot of people. Um, and so, just do the best that you can and realize that nothing in life is perfect. And so all you can do is just, you know, give your best effort and, attempt to get everything done and attempt to lay it out in a way that's helpful for you. And if it doesn't work, recalibrate and move on.
Yeah. Tomorrow we still have time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a school deadline or anything. I mean, even that I actually asked for extension. Well, yes, this is so great. Oh my God. I think I got a lot of insight even from you. So, we have some quick questions. 5 quick
Okay.
questions. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay. So, what's your favorite book recently you've been reading?
My favorite book recently. So I picked up a book a couple months ago called I forget exactly what it's called. It's a collection of the best American food essays from I think it's 2018. It's by Ruth Reichel put it together. And there are some really excellent essays in there about food, and they're very. It's not just about food. Like it's about food as it affects our socioeconomic climate, and how it's really fascinating. Like some really 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 neat and like thought-provoking stuff in there. So yeah,
Wow, that's nice. I'm probably gonna look for that on, is
I'll
it
send you
on
the
Amazon?
um
Probably.
I found it in just like some random local bookstore, but
Mm,
I'll send you the
yeah,
picture of
that would be
it.
nice. Yes. Okay, so the next one, let's see. Yeah, the next one of the quote that you like the most, maybe your mantra, like, things that you really stand for.
Um, wow. I have to think about that. Hmm. I think what we talked about just now with um, perfection and all that. Um, I know it seems like very cliche, but I think that the saying nobody's perfect really resonates with me on so many levels. And it encourages me to be kinder to myself and to be kinder to others, and to also to realize that, as a classical musician, where, perfection is put up on this pedestal, right? Literally nobody's perfect. And so I shouldn't have to worry about being perfect either. And then that translates into so many other aspects of my life as well.
Yes, that, I just want to say this quote is perfect, but I'm like, yeah, yeah. Well, there's a little trap right there. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's perfect. Mm. But definitely, I think musicians sometimes really hard on ourselves. And whenever we have performance, we're like, oh no, it's not perfect. But I'm now I actually changed my mind a lot. Like whenever I finish a performance, I'm like, yeah, there's a little mistake, but next time will be better.
Absolutely.
Yes. So after the quote, let's talk about what's your favorite piece of music right now you're playing.
Oh, my favorite piece of music. My favorite piece of music in general, or just right now that I'm working
Right
on?
now you're working on.
Um, so a piece that's really been resonating with me, no pun intended, um, is the Bieber Passacaglia. Um, which I know it's like the quintessential Baroque violin piece. Like I could have picked something more creative than that, but um, I played it. I did like a virtual recital, right when New York was starting to go into lockdown, and everything. Things were kind of out of the woods now, but this was right when things were like really bad, and um, the subtitle of that, it's the final installment in the Bieber Mystery Sonatas, and it's called The Guardian Angel. That's the subtitle. And there's something about it because it's the only mystery sonata that's unaccompanied, and it's not even really a sonata, it's just a passacaglia. And so there's something about it that's just very introspective, that is mournful but also very hopeful. And I think that sort of encapsulates all the feelings that I personally am feeling at this stage in, you know, my career and my life, just because of what's going on around us. And so that piece has been feeling I've been feeling very close to it recently.
I love it. This is some very deep stuff. I like those deep feelings. Thanks. Thanks. Well,
Yeah.
so next one. What's your current favorite dish?
Ooh, my current favorite dish. Does sourdough bread count?
Sure. I just made 2 loaves today. Like I
Oh,
just baked
really?
it. Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
kind?
The basic type.
The
Because
best type.
I'm out, so I made 2 loaves instead of 1. I love
Oh,
it.
oh
Yes.
man, I would love some fresh bread right now. So yeah, sourdough bread, but also what else? I think I've really been loving shakshuka
Ooh.
recently.
Can you
hmm
tell me what's that?
So shakshuka, it's a North African dish, and it's also found a lot in the Middle East, and it's a tomato dish, which is basically just poached eggs in tomato sauce.
Oh,
It's
yes.
really
I
good.
think I saw even like, yeah, I saw a video on that. It was
hmm
looking really good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I posted a recipe on my blog recently for it too. But there's so many recipes out there that you can find, and it's really good for dipping bread in. So just so you know.
Oh, yes. Perfect combo, right?
Yeah, it's very comforting. So I think that's why I've been enjoying it.
Nice. Yeah. Now, last one. One thing you think that today's listener can take away from our episode, from you.
I think the one thing that whoever is listening can take away from this is that there are so many ways to have a fulfilling career. And you should trust your instincts. If you feel that there's a way that you want your career to be more expressive of who you are, do not be afraid to just do it unapologetically, do it enthusiastically, um, because it will make you feel like a more well-rounded musician if you just go for it.
Amazing. Well, you guys hear it. Courage, basically. Just go for it.
Absolutely.
Yes, if you think things are right, just go for it. Thank you so much for being here.
Of
I
course, thank
really,
you. It's been so much
really,
fun.
really appreciate it. And it's just, yeah, been an amazing conversation with you. And tell me how listeners can find you and get connected with you.
Sure. So on Instagram, I am at Hungry Musician. I also have a website, which is thehungrymusician.com. If you follow me on my website, you'll mostly get recipes. I'm trying to do a little bit more posting about music on there. My music website, where you can find more of my musical projects, that is SJK. So S as in Sarah, J as in Jane, K as in Kenner, sjkviolin.com. And on my Instagram, you'll find both. So you'll find, my musical projects and you'll find my recipes. So I have the two websites, thehungrymusician.com, sjkviolin.com, and then at Hungry Musician on Instagram, you'll get the best of both worlds.
Amazing. Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here again.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I hope you really enjoyed today's episode, and I'd like to thank our guest Sarah again for joining us today. Go check out her Instagram and her Hungry Musician blog, and this weekend cook something nice for yourself, for your family, and always remember to go for your dream and passion. Be sure to check out our blog post for this episode at amywangsviolin.com/podcast and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you use. If you learned anything from today's podcast, please leave a review and share it with your friends. And also download this episode. It would really help this podcast to grow. And if you have any questions, topics you'd like me to cover in the future, email me at thrivexdrive@gmail.com. Thanks again. See you next week.